Now, the big winner, Miss Colorado, crowned by last year's Miss America. She is Marilyn Vandiver of Denver, the 20-year-old debutante who wins a title worth some 60 grand in scholarships and personal appearances.
I wish you bluebirds in the spring to give your heart a song to sing, and then a kiss. Much more than this, I wish you love.
I'm Larry Atler, husband of Marilyn, father of Jennifer, son of Dorothy, and brother of Greta and Janie, all of whom are very special and important support team members. Our daughter, Jennifer, and I were supposed to speak tonight from the perspective of a supporter of an incest survivor. But alas, we were cut when we re-examined the agenda. Nevertheless, she's going to introduce her mother. But before she does, do we have a half hour or so I can tell you about Jennifer? Suffice it to say, and I'll read it because otherwise I'll go on forever. Suffice it to say that she is a very caring, bright, sensitive, supportive, fun young lady with an abundance of wisdom far beyond her years. Jennifer.
Since the very first day of my life, my parents have treated me as an equal. I know this sounds trite, but it's true. My parents are my very best friends, and for a teenager, this is not very common. There were never any secrets in our house. That is until I was 13. At that time, Dee Dee and Karen and my parents met every night for hours, and I was sent to my room. I had never been sent to my room before in my life. I felt very excluded and locked out. I could not understand it. It was a year before my mom told me her story. I finally understood all of the secrets, and I really think we secured a very special bond on that day. Although I understand it a little bit better now, I couldn't comprehend that she thought I wouldn't want her to be my mother anymore. Once she let me in, though, I was able to help her and nurture her as she had me for 13 years. On the outside, she was the first outstanding woman speaker in America, Phi Beta Kappa, Miss America, and the list goes on and on. On the inside, she had acute anxiety, screaming skin, total insomnia, and frequent paralysis. And again, the list goes on and on. With all of these problems, you would think she would have been wrapped up in her own problems, but that is far from the truth. She has been the most attentive, compassionate, and giving mother I could ever imagine. Even with all of her problems, she always had an ear to listen or a shoulder to cry on, not just for me, but for anyone who needed it. When I and all my friends were applying to college, a common essay was, write about the person who's most influenced your life. 3 of my friends wrote about my mother. On my application to Duke, the question was, who is your hero and why? I wrote my essay about her, and needless to say, I got in. This is my hero, but more importantly, this is my mother, Marilyn Vandiver Atler.
My life has been far more blessed than it has been burdened. How I love my family. This is only the second time that my night child has spoken in public. She needs to read from a text. It makes my day child crazy, but we haven't had a chance to even talk to each other this week. Those of you who attended the first small meeting 2 weeks ago will find me and my remarks vastly different. So much has happened. Following the front page story the following morning about the sexual violations I had experienced for 13 years, a reporter called me late in the evening. He said, "What is your memory of today, after the press conference and all the questions?" I thought for a minute, and then I knew the answer. I had felt no shame. I suddenly realized it was the end of an era. I had spoken the I word all day, and I felt no shame. I hung up the phone and realized I would never have to hide my secret again. I felt like Julie Andrews singing The Sound of Music while dancing across the meadow. Saying the words and finding out that people did not look at me with disgust and disdain, that they admired, that some even wept for the night child, the child I had found so dirty, so ugly, so unacceptable. The truth and the people's unexpected compassion had finally set me free. 33 years ago, I won a title that became an extension of my name. Until May 8, 1991, if my name were printed in the paper, I was Marilyn Vandiver, Miss America of 1958. As of May 8th and forevermore, my name is Marilyn Vandiver Atler, incest survivor. I've only had 2 weeks to digest that, but that is the way it should be. Just as Jonas Salk will always be known for his major accomplishment of discovering the polio vaccine, I will now be known for my major accomplishment. I survived incest. Not only am I no longer ashamed of it, I am proud of it. If people knew what we had to do to survive, if people knew the terror, pain, despair, hopelessness, the endless black hours of the night we fought through year after year, they would have to come up with a new Nobel Prize for incredible achievement. We need to replace shame with pride. Pride in our courage, pride in our persistence, pride in our survival. In recent years, there was never any doubt in my mind that I would try to have helped violated children and adult survivors. The pain was too intense and the dysfunction too severe to not step into the arena. But I now know what caused me to lose 10 pounds these past 2 weeks. The time and the place were not my choice. Losing control is what sexually assaulted men and women fear most of all. As children, we lose control of our bodies. No matter how fiercely we lock up our bodies, strong fathers or brothers can pry us open. And no matter how we try never to feel anything, even if we separate our minds from our bodies, we lose control, and we are terrorized of ever losing control again. I had lost control of my secret and my words. I didn't have the slick answers that I'd always had in my professional life. I had always been so totally prepared. I had to be. The end of my first day of press interviews, a CNN reporter in Atlanta interviewed me by remote. I was at a local TV station. I couldn't see her. I looked into an empty black box. I was sitting in a fully operating newsroom with the televisions on and an earpiece that didn't fit. The interviewer said, "As we close our interview today, Marilyn, one final question. Would you be speaking to me today if your father were still alive?" I had no slick answer. I had no answer at all. I would like to say to the Denver media, thank you for your kindness. Thank you for not harassing and badgering my family members. You have been sensitive to our family pain, and I will always be grateful. I would never have dreamed that my night child was strong enough to say the unspeakable words in public, not only the word incest. There was an equally unspeakable word, The word was 18. I have no memory of what my mind had to do to survive when I was 16 and 17, kissing Larry at the door with all the feelings of a young girl in love. What did my mind have to do to walk through that door? A teenager with the strongest possible morals and ethics. To walk down the long hall to my room, only to be violated in ways that were unthinkable to the child and the teenager, so isolated and alone in her room. My mind had long ago left my body, and as we learned in Psychology 101 with Pavlov's experiments, the patterning and the conditioning had begun a full decade earlier. I had never needed other people's judgments. When memories and feelings surfaced and overwhelmed me with anguish from 1984 through 1988, I found I had long ago judged the night child. I had found her guilty, and I had sentenced her to death. Over and over, year after year, to Larry, to Dee Dee, to therapists, I would cry it and wail it. The night child should have died, and my adult body would try to do just that as it would go into paralysis. A woman wrote me immediately after the articles and said, "My father raped me from age 8 to age 17. No one can understand how I could be 17. Even I don't understand it. But now I don't feel so ashamed." My name is Marilyn Vandiver. I survived incest from age 5 to age 18, and I feel no shame. I said 4 other words that had people shaking their heads. I loved my father. A close friend to me said, "You loved your father?" I'll never understand that. Total lack of attention during the day can result in feelings so overwhelmingly conflicting that a child is forced to split her mind in half in order to survive. The father keeps giving her a sugar pill laced with arsenic. Who would stand in judgment of an adult who has lived through such torture at the hands of a father, brother, uncle, grandfather, even a mother? My name is Marilyn Vandiver. I am an incest survivor from age 5 to 18. I, the day child, loved my father, and I feel no shame. There were 4 words that I have not been able to say until tonight. They are the most difficult words to speak, more difficult even than incest and 18. These 4 words jumped from the pages of the first book I read on incest in 1984, one of the first books available then. As my eyes focused on them, the words branded themselves on my brain. A woman wrote, "My body betrayed me." I had to push that sentence out of my thoughts. It would be a year before I would be able to think about it. One day in 1985, in despair, I was seared in pain as the memories and feelings began to emerge. I suddenly knew my body had betrayed me. I hadn't been able to cut off all feelings. My body had responded. She needed to die. The night child had to die. The author of the recently published Courage to Heal had obviously read the same sentence. She wrote, "Your body did not betray you. Your body did what it was designed to do. Your father betrayed you." It has only been in the last 2 years that I have been able to say, no, I shouldn't have died. If my father couldn't stop it, if he wouldn't go for help, then my father should have died. I believe that today. For 13 years, my father betrayed me. It was my father who should have died. My name is Marilyn Vandiver. I survived incest from age 5 to 18. I, the day child, loved my father, and after years in therapy, I finally understood that it was not the night child who should have died, and I, the night child, have no shame. Most of you know that the major reason I came through the healing process strong and energized is because my life was graced with Dee Dee, Larry, and Jennifer, all three brilliant, intuitive, and gifted healers. But I also survived because I did my work, and I would like to touch on that tonight. The implication has been that wherever I have turned, I was embraced and we walked into the sunset with music playing. By sharing with you only the Hollywood endings, I have been grossly unfair to those of you agonizing in families, traumatized by sexual assaults. In hundreds of letters these past few days, you have told me of your fractured relationships, the pain of denial, the inability of others to understand your years of anguish. So I have asked my family members if they would be comfortable with my sharing a few of the painful times, and they have agreed. I touch on these experiences because I believe there is only one route to healing, and that is you must do your work. I was 24 when Dee Dee Harvey said words that brought my repressed past up before my eyes. And during that agonizing afternoon, he gave me my first work, telling Larry. The risk of telling Larry was that I would lose the most important thing in my life, him. There could not have been a bigger risk. But I did my work. After our meeting, Larry flew back to Denver and I flew back to my New York apartment where I was living with another former Miss America. She said, "How was your trip?" I said, "Great." Larry wasn't even in my mind. The next day, a special delivery letter arrived from Dee Dee. He was euphoric. Now we understood why I had kept rejecting Larry. For fear he would find out who I really was, now we could be married. What was he talking about? I didn't want to marry Larry, and I wasn't liking his letter at all. But etched forever in my memory were the last two words on the first page. But remember, you will revert to your old habit patterns of repression. The only way you can change this patterning is by telling Larry everything you think and feel. You have no room anywhere in your body or your mind for secrets. He had given me more work. It was difficult always. One day, Larry and I were sitting in the old Golden Ox restaurant, and the subject of my trust came up. I had saved $50,000 from my work as Miss America. As we started discussing the money, I had to say words so very difficult to speak. I said, "I don't trust you." No one had ever been so trustworthy. In 10 years of loving him, never once in any way had he violated me by word or deed. Tears flooded his eyes. He said, "I understand. In time you will." When Jennifer was turning 5, my body went into paralysis. I wouldn't understand for years that her age mirrored the traumas I experienced at age 5. I was hospitalized and given every conceivable test. It would never have occurred to me that incest would cause physical paralysis, but even if it had, I could never have told anyone else. not even my doctors. One day I was scheduled for a CAT scan at a neighboring hospital at 7 in the morning. Larry was with me always. When we arrived, Larry's mother, father, and his two sisters, Janie and Greta, were already there, as they had been there for me every single day since the day I had told them my secret. When I was driven back to St. Joseph's, his family was already there, waiting outside my door. For reasons I didn't understand, I began sobbing uncontrollably. When I finally stopped, I heard Larry's father crying in the hall, and I vowed I would do everything possible to never again do this to my family. I would do my work, whatever was asked of me. After a lengthy stay, my doctor said they could find nothing physically wrong. They suggested going to a psychiatrist. A psychiatrist? Me? Go to a psychiatrist? Okay, I would do my work. We settled on a psychiatrist with impeccable credentials. I knew I would have to tell him about my father. I was agonizing. I felt I was betraying him. After several visits, I told the psychiatrist I would need to speak with my father. We had never spoken of it. I'd had a daydream during the paralysis, the same daydream over and over. My father was lying in a casket, and I was standing over him saying, "Too late, too late." He had died, and we had never spoken of it. The psychiatrist said I would not be able to speak to my father for at least 2 years of seeing him every single day for 2 years, 5 days a week. I waited until our 50 minutes were up, and then I walked out of his office and into the nearest phone booth. I called my father. I said, "I need to see you." He said, "Come on over." I said, "No, at home." I arrived before he did and made sure the door and the screen were open and unlocked in case I needed to get out quickly. He sat down on the far side of the breakfast room table. In terror, I said, "This is the most difficult thing I have ever done." He said, "Just a minute." And he went upstairs. I waited for a toilet to flush or a phone call to be made, but he came back quickly. I knew he had a gun. Pictures flashed through my mind. I never doubted that he could have killed me or himself, or more probably, both of us. And I certainly do not recommend this to anyone else. But on that day, nothing would have stopped me. I had been working on what I would say to him for days. I knew exactly what I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it. He didn't deny anything. It would never have occurred to me that he would. But I know now that so many violators blatantly deny any violations. I will repeat only 2 sentences from our conversation. He said, "If I had known what it would do to you, I never would have done it." I didn't believe him then, and I don't believe him now. Let no violator of a child's body ever take comfort in that excuse again. Hear us, fathers, brothers, cousins, and yes, even grandfathers and mothers. The long-term effects of sexual violations on girls and boys are incomprehensible. After our conversation, I rose to leave, and he pulled out the gun. He said, "If you had come in any other way, I would have killed myself." I interpreted that to mean if I had planned to expose him. If he had used the gun, I believe he would have killed both of us. My work also included talking with every single member of my family and Larry's family over a period of years. Each time it was agonizing, and each time it was a risk. But no one could ever know me unless they knew this about me. Because incest was the molding experience of my entire life. Everything I have thought, said, done, or felt has been influenced dramatically by that. It included telling Jennifer, believing, truly believing, that she would never want me as her mother anymore. It was the second biggest risk I had ever taken. But I did my work. My work included over 100 deep massages and over 100 Rolfing sessions as I tried to free my body from pain. At least 60 acupuncture sessions, acupressure, perhaps 50 sessions of hypnosis, neuro-linguistic programming, dance therapy, bioenergetics, self-defense therapy. Self-defense therapy was incredibly powerful for me. Psychotherapy, small support group meetings, 1 year with a woman psychologist, sessions with 2 different highly reputable men psychiatrists. One told me one day to go home and smoke marijuana. Another told me at the first session he didn't think incest was such a big deal to have caused all this. Fortunately, for 2 years, I have seen a man psychiatrist, Dr. Nagel. He is a very gifted, intelligent, and caring man. I have read hundreds of articles and 72 books as I have searched for relief and healing. At the Camp National Center in the Adult Survivor Program, we will pool our experiences and share what worked for us, what was a waste of time, and what was hurtful. In 1987, a superb psychotherapist I had worked with for a year, Bobby Fuhrer, called me and said she was going to have a support group meeting with 6 women. Meetings, a multitude of meetings. 3 violated by brothers, 2 by fathers, and 1 by multiple relatives. Would I come? I said, why would you even call me? You know I would never do that. I would never do that, never. We hung up. I sat for a few minutes, and then I called her back. I said, whew, what an overreaction. I guess I know what I have to do. I'll be there. The first night I sat outside in my car. I couldn't go in. I just couldn't go in. Finally, I said to myself, why can't I go in? And I answered very slowly, because I don't want to be one of them. But I answered, but I am one of them. And I walked in. She told me the 6 women were downstairs. She said, I'm waiting for one more. She's the only one I don't know. She called a couple of hours ago and said she would be here. Why don't you go on downstairs? I said, no, I'll go down when you do. The doorbell rang. I was stunned when I saw her. She was me when I was 20 years old. Blonde ponytail, blue eyes, Levi's and sneakers, a student at DU. The look in her eyes told me this was the first time she had ever tried to reach out. We went around the room and said our first names and our ages. When I said 49, she looked at me with hopelessness. I said, you won't have to do your work when you're 49 if you do your work now. You can do your work now, or you can do your work later, but you will have to do the work of healing. And I vowed right then that I would do every bit of hard work to encourage her to open up the cavern of pain I knew she had long ago blocked and sealed over. As we concluded the first meeting, Bobby said, next week, please bring a doll to represent your inner child. I erupted. Bobby, you know I hate dolls. I hate dolls. You can do anything you want to a doll. You can stick things in her, you can punch her and pull her, and she can't stop you. Bobby said, Marilyn will not bring a doll. Isn't it nice that we can laugh a little bit? I left knowing, of course, that the stronger my reaction, the greater the anger, the bigger the flashing sign, this is your work. I also knew, I'll call her Sally, might not be willing to work hard if I didn't do what was hard. The next day I ran into a children's store wanting to grab any doll. Who cared? Just a doll. Get it over with. I hated shopping anyway. There were shelves of dolls, every size, shape, and form. Why couldn't I just take any doll? I dashed into another store, looking, so many dolls. No, I ran into Target. I looked up and down, rows of dolls. That one. It would be years before I would truly understand the subconscious significance of the doll I had picked. She only had a head, no body. And when I went home, I took typewriter eraser fluid and I took off her mouth. It was only months ago in therapy that I realized why I had taken her mouth off. Not only because of what might come out of her mouth, but because of what might go into her mouth. At our next session, Bobby asked us to put the dolls in front of us one by one and tell our dolls what happened to them. I grieved over her. I cried for her. When she enters into a sexual relationship, or when her daughter is 6 or 8 or 10, or when someone punctures the vastness of her pain, she will have to do her work. It is just so much more difficult the longer we keep it buried. In 1985, during the time of my deepest despair, a younger relative I love and adore came over one day and said, "I know your dad messed around with you, but I'm told it's not a big deal, and besides, it happened a long time ago. Let go of the past. Let's talk about the present." This was during my recovery period. She was not talking to an adult. She was talking to the child, and I burst into rage. I said, "Well, let me tell you what a big deal it wasn't." Experiences like those traumatized the child in me, who was reaching out to be heard, reaching out finally for understanding and protection. Your letters these past 2 weeks have told me of fractured families, denial, trivialization, anger. I understand. Family members may need to deny, trivialize, or even turn away for their own conscious or subconscious reasons. And we agonize as we have to let them go. A father who violates his children traumatizes a family. If we want to place blame for anger or pain, then we must turn and place the blame where it belongs. For my family, it belongs on my father, buried near the cross on the mountain, the cross that he built. But doing my work involved, most of all, my mother. I asked her if she would be comfortable if I touched on our long and agonizing journey, because I felt we had been unfair to families in pain to only talk about those who had responded to me immediately in love and support. She said yes, it would be okay. My anxiety had begun to shut my life down completely in the spring of 1984. My father died unexpectedly in the fall. After a year later, in 1985, after hundreds of hours of working through feelings and memories with Larry, Dee Dee, and his wife Karen, I became obsessed with confronting Mother. Obsessed. I thought my body would burst from the rage and the pain if I did not speak to her. I called our group together to ask their advice. If I didn't talk to her, I would die. But if I did talk to her, I thought she might die. We decided it was something I had to do. I sobbed as I tried to find the words. When the picture was clear, she looked at me matter-of-factly and said, "I don't believe you. It's in your fantasy." I felt like I'd been kicked in the stomach. Overwhelming emotions flooded my body, feelings of total rejection, astonishment, despair. I was demolished. I don't know how I ever managed to drive home. My phone was ringing. It was my eldest sister, Gwen, calling me from California. I was sobbing. I said, "I'm so sorry. I just had to tell Mother." She didn't believe me. Gwen said, "I know. She just called me and told me that you were making up ridiculous stories." I told her you were not. She said, "How do you know?" I said, "Because it happened to me too." What if I hadn't had a sister to validate me? I was 46 years old, accomplished and successful. What happens to a child who has no sister to stand by her side? Incest isolates a child from everyone except the violator. The child has no one to turn to except the father. When an adult survivor goes through recovery, he or she turns to family members for the first time as a child. I was not a woman asking for understanding. I was 6 or 8 or 10, seeking a mother to hear me, to cry for me, to cry with me. I was devastated by my mother's denial. My dysfunction intensified. I knew Mother wanted to help me. I know she never meant to hurt me. And it is difficult for older generations to comprehend what was so unspeakable for them. I knew that in my 46-year-old mind. But the child was overwhelmed with pain. Mother's inability to hear the cries and despairs of the child, as I would continue to reach out to her again and again, devastated and enraged the child in me. Sometimes it would be days, but most often it would be weeks before I could speak to her again. She would always be willing to try again. She wanted to be the mother I needed. One morning she called and asked, "How did you sleep?" I always said okay to anyone who asked, but this time I decided to be honest. I said it was a terrible night. The sleeping pills didn't help. I had night terrors. It was terrible. She said, "I've told you before. Now try it tonight. Take 2 Tums." I felt rage and despair. Why couldn't she hear me? I said, "Mother, I can't speak to you again." And I couldn't for almost 5 months. We began to try again. Dee Dee would talk with her. Larry would talk with her. She would say, "I want to help. What can I do?" We were like shadow boxers trying to find a way to be mother and daughter. There were other very painful experiences that we went through. They are not appropriate to go into tonight. But it was 7 long years of trying, backing off, and then trying again. On May 6th, only 17 days ago, I told my mother that I would be addressing a small group of survivors and therapists on May the 8th. I said, "I need you to be there as my mother. It's easy to stand next to me in Atlantic City, but I need you to stand by my side now, in the tough times." She said, "Of course I will be there. I want to help you in any way I can." I said, "Mother, it isn't going to be easy to listen to what I'm going to say. It's going to be difficult, very, very difficult." She said, "Don't worry about me. I'll be fine." I said, "But I do worry about you." She said, "Really, I'll be fine. Really, I will." When I said the last few sentences of my remarks that night, 16 members of the Atler and Vandiver families had tears streaming down their faces as I turned to my mother and said, "I am proud that you are my mother. The next morning, we found our family was on the front page of the paper. I called Mother and I said, "I'm so sorry, Mother. How are you doing?" She said, "No. How are you doing?" I have a mother. She has a daughter. The work can take years. I'm 53, Mother is 82. It is never too late. But I believe healing occurs only when we are willing to work through the pain. It took too many years for me. That's why we're forming the Adult Survivor Program, to find ways to support one another. One of the first letters I received 2 weeks ago from a woman who wrote, "I need to see you and touch you and know that you are real." I know what she is saying. When a woman has a double mastectomy, a woman will walk into her hospital room and say, "Hi, I'm Jane. Do I look great or what? I had a double mastectomy 7 years ago. I look great in an evening gown. I swim all summer. My husband adores me and my body. And my children think I'm super. I've been cancer-free for 7 years. The prognosis is I'm cancer-free." Any questions? When I was in the early stages of recovery, I needed to see and touch and know a woman was real, who had survived the reliving of the pain. I needed her to say that her husband didn't give up on her, that he didn't say, "I just can't take one more day of this." I needed to know that they were able to resume a meaningful sexual relationship, and that her children looked up to her with respect and never said, even with body language, "Mom, this happened a long time ago. Can't you let it go?" I vowed that if I ever survived the healing process, I as a woman and we as a family would stand before any woman or man suffering and say, "We survived the healing process stronger, happier, and even more committed to one another." We had expected 10 survivors after our first small meeting. We have been overwhelmed with people in pain. There is so much work to be done. For many of us, it starts with speaking our names. When I stopped by the Kemp Center a few days ago, a receptionist says the calls in are coming by the hundreds to say thank you. Most will not leave their names. I said next year, they will leave their names. A prominent businesswoman put a letter in my mailbox and poured out a lifetime of pain from incest. She closed by saying, "If you have had the courage to speak your name, then today I, at least, will have the courage to sign my name." It is a first step. Sign your name, speak your name, turn to a trusted family member or friend. Many times I needed to write letters because I couldn't speak the words. I have written many letters. I mailed almost all of them. I have never regretted a single one. Have the courage to attend group meetings, and it does take courage. We stay shamed by acting ashamed. We need to remember what Jennifer said to me when she was only 14 years old. "Why are you ashamed, Mommy? You didn't do anything wrong." One week after the story was on the front page of the paper, a close and trusted friend came in my door and said, "I called the newspapers today and told them I was tired of this story, tired of it. If they were that hard up for news, I had a woodpecker that was ruining my roof and they should cover that." I said nothing, but I felt rage beginning to seethe inside me. I had not volunteered for this job. But each day I began to feel more confidence, more energy, more purpose. I realized that what I had perceived to be an unwelcome spotlight on my secret was in fact a very special gift. If only for a few days we had the power of the press. And that is a gift I have always taken very seriously. I felt galvanized. I felt like a 747 with all jets burning, like a race car gunning the engine just ready to go. All of a sudden I knew as long as there is a camera pointed at me, as long as there is a reporter with a pencil in his or her hand, I will try to protect the children. I will say to every rapist and volunteer who will violate a child this very night with acts so unspeakable, her mind will be forced to leave her body. Your child may be mute today, but someday your child will speak your name. The children will speak every single name. And as we take away the children's secrets, we will take away the rapist's power. We will tell the children that adult survivors, we will seek them out as a lioness seeks her cubs, that we will surround and protect them, that we will dedicate our lives to making their path of healing easier than ours has been. But first, we must do our own work. We need to stop acting shamed. We must stand and speak our names with pride, because we survived with no one to help us, and with no hope of the violence ever ending. Because we lived through night terrors and bodies screaming out in pain. Why have I been so ashamed? How could I have hated with all my being the night child? All these years, I have hidden a treasure, a sweet little girl trying to survive while being used for a big man's pleasures. I should have wanted to hide my father. I should have been ashamed of him. Somehow, so many years ago, I got it all turned around, but I finally have it figured out. If only one accomplishment is written beside my name, I say with pride, my name is Marilyn Vandiver Atler, and I survived incest. Please, if you can, after the meeting, come and tell me your name with pride. The Miss America pageant called to ask if I would be a celebrity judge. I said I would be happy to be there if they would introduce me with the following words. Former Miss America, Marilyn Vandiver Atler,
now committed to helping adults sexually violated as children. The request was not negotiable. I knew that they might retract their invitation, but there was no doubt in my mind that I would hold firm. I had the most symbolic opportunity imaginable, and an opportunity that would allow me once again to do my work. And it seemed only appropriate that the most important accomplishment of my life be mentioned. They agreed.
Named Outstanding Woman Speaker in America, former Miss America, now committed to helping adults who have been sexually violated as children, Marilyn Vandiver Atler.